Commissioner Fielder is in.
Commissioner Pinocci, can you hear me?
I hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Commissioner Pinocci. Commissioner Fielder?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Okay, very good. Good afternoon, everybody. Today's date is Tuesday, January 17, 2023. This is the time and place for our regularly scheduled business meeting. The time is now 1:32 p.m. I will call this meeting of the Public Service Commission to order. Would the other commissioners join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? All right. Thank you, commissioners. I will note for the record that Commissioner O'Donnell, Commissioner Bukacek, and myself are present in the Bollinger Room. Vice President Fielder and Commissioner Pinocci are participating online, so we do have quorum. The Montana Public Service Commission welcomes public comment on any matter before the commission on today's agenda and or any matter within the regulatory jurisdiction of the commission, and invites public to participate. Are there any public commenters in the room? Ms. Heim.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Brown, commissioners. My name is Shannon Heim. I am the General Counsel and a Vice President of Northwestern Energy. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to briefly speak to you today. As you may have heard, late yesterday, Northwestern announced an agreement to provide Northwestern's Montana customers needed on-demand generation capacity and allow Avista to exit ownership of the Colstrip plant. I am here today just to give you a few of the details and answer any questions, of course, at the president's discretion. Northwestern will acquire Avista's ownership of Colstrip units 3 and 4, which compose 222 megawatts for no transaction price, effective January 1st, 2026. Avista will retain its obligation for its portion of environmental and decommissioning costs associated with the future closure of the plant. Northwestern Energy will be responsible for the operational costs of the 15% shares of Colstrip units 3 and 4 when the ownership is transferred. Avista and Northwestern will prorate Avista's share of the cost of certain capital expenses for the Colstrip plant from now through January 2026. Acquiring more generation at no transaction price allows Northwestern to continue to make other necessary investments in our Montana energy system with less impact on customers' bills. During the frigid temperatures last month in December, 41% of Northwestern's peak Montana energy load was met with market purchases, primarily from out-of-state resources. And most of those purchases were at extremely high prices. Northwestern's natural gas-fired generation facilities, our share of the Colstrip plant, and hydro generation supplied about half of our power during our customers' highest energy needs. Weather conditions, including the extreme cold, meant that Northwestern's considerable Montana wind generation resources could not provide much, if any, power. As I'm sure you know, cold weather, especially extreme cold, usually comes with low pressure systems that preclude wind generation. In addressing the need for additional on-demand 24/7 generation in Montana to avoid an energy crisis, Northwestern continues to implement our all of the above strategy. Not everyone will agree with our strategic decision, but at the end of the day, it is our responsibility to provide safe and reliable service for our customers, and we take that responsibility very seriously. As the commission is aware, we are adding both new renewable and thermal generation to our Montana portfolio. Our acquisition of additional Colstrip capacity provides balance to our portfolio and some much needed certainty for the remainder of the decade about the availability of Colstrip. We look forward to continuing the conversation about Colstrip in a standalone docket after we conclude the ongoing rate review. We value the important relationship between the utility and the commission to provide Montanans with reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy.
Thank you, Ms. Heim. Any additional public commenters in the room? Seeing none, do we have any public commenters online? Seeing none, we're notified that we might have a commenter online this afternoon, so if he does appear, we will certainly accommodate his public comment. All right, we do have one change to the agenda this afternoon. The legislative work session for today for the commission will be new number 4 on the work session. And we will move litigation status update to number 5. All right, let's move into action items. Action item number 1 is approval of the commission minutes for the week of January 9th, 2023. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Move to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
The minutes for the week of January 9th, 2023 have been moved for approval and seconded. Is there discussion? Any changes to the minutes as drafted? Any revisions?
Mr. President,
Vice President Fielder.
did we get the change in? I believe the announcement last week regarding this meeting. I think it was set for 9:30 in the minutes, and I think the announcement was for 1:30 today. Did that change get made?
Yes, it did. Vice
Thank
President Fielder. Any other comments, revisions, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Commissioner O'Donnell's motion to approve the commission minutes for the week of January 9th, 2023 signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying nope. Seeing no opposition, minutes are approved. Action item number 2. This is commission initiated. This is a request for staff out of state travel approval. Mr. Rosequist.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Commissioners. Staff requests approval for Grant Fink and Brooke Umstead to travel to Bismarck, North Dakota, February 15th through the 17th to conduct a discovery audit of Montana Dakota Utilities in connection with its current application for an increase in electric service rates in docket 2022.11.099. During the audit, staff will review information for the past 3 years regarding minutes of the meetings of the Board of Directors, internal audit reports, external audit reports, tax returns, fees for memberships in industry associations or organizations, interdepartmental transactions, and general ledger entries, among other things. The purpose of the audit is to enable staff to obtain an understanding of the utility's financial information and identify issues that may need further exploration through data requests or additional issue procedures in the rate proceeding in order to help the commission to have an adequate base of information on which to evaluate the reasonableness of MDU's rate requests. The expected total cost of this out-of-state travel is $2,624, and staff recommends approval, Mr. Chairman, President.
Thank you, Mr. Rosequist. Is there a motion, Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I wish to move the acceptance of this travel request.
Is there a second?
Second.
Bukacek has seconded. Discussion, questions? Commissioner O'Donnell.
I would note that, I've been through this several times of traveling in my 6 years here. And just wanted to point out to the public that this is a very important, it seems to me, a very important part of our job is to monitor things without having the commission get deluged with all this information. It seems to me it's much more practical and expeditious on both parties for the commission staff to travel to look at all these documents and be on site there. So I'm happy to make this motion.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Additional discussion? Additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Commissioner O'Donnell's motion to approve out-of-state travel signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, staff travel is approved unanimously. All right. That disposes of our action items. Let's move into our work session. Work session matter, which would generally be number 1, which is now number 3, is Rule 38.5.10.10. This is commission initiated. We're here to discuss an amendment to Rule 38.5.10.10, incorporation by reference of National Electrical Safety Code. We'll update the rule to reflect the 2023 edition of the National Electric Safety Code. Mr. Palco.
President Brown and commissioners, today I'm before you to
Mr.
recommend.
Palco, can you move the microphone closer, please?
Sure. I'm here before you today to recommend amending Montana Rule 38.5.1010, the incorporation by reference of National Electric Safety Code. The only amendment is to update by reference to the current code edition as required by law from 2017 to 2023. Staff will have to make non-substantive changes to some of the dates included in the proposed draft rule before you, just due to filing deadlines with the Secretary of State. Staff recommends that we approve the draft notice and authorize staff to make non-substantive changes and edits recommended by the Secretary of State.
Mr. Palco, did you want to weigh in, Joel? Joel waves off. Is there a motion, Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I moved that the commission amend Rule 38.5.1010 to update Montana standards to the National Electrical Safety Code, as happens on a frequent basis, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bukacek has seconded. Discussion, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Just to point out that with the pipeline safety and electrical safety is that whatever the federal standards are, that we conform in all cases to the federal standards by updating our rules and regulations here, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Additional discussion? I will be supporting this motion. I think Commissioner O'Donnell has done a great job explaining what our action is today. It's a pro forma matter that's required to stay in compliance with relevant safety codes. Additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Commissioner O'Donnell's motion to update the rule to reflect the 2023 edition of National Electrical Safety Code and to allow the staff authority to make such non-substantive revisions as are needed, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Palco. All right, as was announced during the course of this meeting, we are incorporating a new number 4, which would be the commission's legislative work session. We're here to discuss legislative bills from the 2023 Montana session that impact the PSC. Mr. Rosequist.
Good afternoon again, Mr. President, Commissioners. I will apologize in advance for what may end up being a bit of a rough legislative work session with the ready testing going on last week. Staff teams did not really have a chance to meet on any of these bills, but I hope to walk through several of the bills that we talked about last week and then a couple of new ones. But staff has no pending recommendations before you at this time. I'll start off with House Bill 52, which is a commission requested bill to revise common carrier regulation. This bill is being sponsored by Representative Kenny Zolnikoff. There was a hearing on this bill in front of the House Energy Committee. It has now passed out of committee and passed out of the House and is now in the Senate, referred to the Senate Highways and Transportation Committee. House Bill 170, sponsored by Steve Gunderson, would repeal state energy policy. A hearing on this bill was held on January 11th in front of the House Energy Committee. And I did not watch that committee meeting, so I am not sure exactly what happened, if anything, at that hearing. House Bill 176, sponsored by Representative Stephen Galloway, revises county utility permitting laws. We did discuss this bill at the last work session last week. The commission chose not to entertain any motions, or no motions were made on that bill. There was a hearing on that bill on Thursday, January 12th, in front of the House Local Government Committee. And again, staff did not monitor that hearing, so not sure what happened. House Bill 191, sponsored by Representative Brad Barker, eliminates Class D motor carrier regulation. We have not talked about this. Well, we did mention it last week. But there is a hearing scheduled in that on that bill in front of the House Energy Committee on Monday, January 23rd at 3 o'clock. So I'll pause and see if the commission wants to.
Thank you, Mr. Rosequist. Point of information for my colleagues, which may necessitate some action on the part of the commission. We did each receive an email from Representative Brad Barker, I think his name is, from Carbon County, who is Brad Barker, who is the sponsor of this legislation. He sent an email late yesterday, I believe, should be in your inbox, asking the commission to send an informational witness to this hearing when it is held on January 23. And I would like the commission's input on whether we are inclined to accept that request. I would again note, as we discussed last week, that we are defendants in a lawsuit challenging legality of the Class D motor licensing scheme and state law. The commission did not take a position on this bill last week. I would support the commission not taking a position on this bill moving forward, but I would like to have input on Representative Barker's request to send a staff member to be an informational witness. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. President, is there a qualitative difference between a commissioner being that informational witness as opposed to a staff person?
Commissioner O'Donnell, if that's directed at me, I'm happy to answer. Qualitative, I would say in terms of substance, I think a commissioner could answer questions. However, again, I would strongly encourage no commissioner to.
Well, that was
participate in
my
that
point,
hearing.
is that because of our position, a staff person, would that not compromise the position of the commission to have a staff person there as an informational purpose?
Mr. Hamilton, would you come forward? I have some thoughts on this, but I'm going to defer to our chief legal counsel.
It seems to me a good idea to have a staff person there in case, because it's specifically requested for questions. It's not that often that members of legislative committees really seek input from the commission for things that have to do with us.
Mr. President, Commissioner O'Donnell, it's a fair question. I would say there are a couple of considerations to take into account. First is that every commissioner is named as a defendant in the Noland lawsuit, alleging the entire Class D regulatory scheme is unconstitutional. So it presents some unique issues when the named defendant is appearing in front of a public body, providing comment on any legislation that may pertain to the litigation itself. I would also note that as an informational witness, whomever you send up would be not taking a position on the merits of the legislation proposal. It would be only to provide background information. In fact, as I recall, at least in past sessions, an informational witness is not permitted to provide any comments really whatsoever. They're only there to stand for questions from the committee. And in responding to those questions from the committee, it would be essential in a case like this for the informational witness to not present any comments that would be sort of opining on the nature of the merits of the litigation currently pending in Flathead District Court. It would be, as I understand it, only for the purpose of providing background on the procedure and the law as it applies to the commission. Does that answer your question? I don't know if I actually did answer.
No, it does. Thank you. And it would seem to me that from your insightful grasp of this, that you might be the appropriate person to take care of that.
Mr. President, Commissioner, I will do as the commission instructs on this one.
Mr. Hamilton, I think you addressed the point that I was going to make is the fact that this is somewhat of a tricky situation for the agency, given the lawsuit pending against the agency, and that it would be advisable if if we decided to send an informational witness, would be the proper informational witness to send up, so that no representation is made on behalf of the agency that could otherwise be used against us in the lawsuit. Additional discussion.
Mr. President.
Commissioner Field.
Thank you, Mr. President. I concur with both your remarks and Commissioner O'Donnell's remarks that it would be helpful to have an informational witness there only to speak about technical questions that may arise and to avoid anything that would be compromising in terms of the litigation and also the old doc we have right now with a PCN carrier that's still open because it's in litigation as well. But the legislature moves quickly and things happen fast and hearings get scheduled, sometimes with some notice and sometimes with very little or no notice at all. And so I think it would be in the interest of the commission to provide the president with the authority to determine when and if informational witnesses should be sent on these different pieces of legislation. So,
Commissioner Fielder, you're cutting in and out, but I got the thrust of your statements. If I may restate them, you made the point that legislation does move very quickly during the Montana legislative session. There may be times when we need to provide informational testimony on a bill as an agency, particularly in cases where we have a legislator reach out to us to request. And I believe your solution was to give the president or his designee the authority to designate an informational witness if time doesn't allow for full commission consideration.
that's correct, Mr. President. I'd like to put that in the form of a motion.
All right. Commissioner O'Donnell has seconded that process. Discussion? I'll support this motion. I think it's good to have a process in place, the agency to respond quickly to requests from legislators. Generally, if we're going to get a request from a legislator to provide informational testimony, that is never going to be a problem. But this just happens to be a bill that where situation dictates that we be careful. Additional discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Vice
Mr. President.
Fielder.
Thank you. I'm sorry, my computer was cutting out. Seems to be a little bit under the weather, just as I am today. But this process for responding when, for example, with Mr. Barker, he emailed each of us individually, and it was at a group thread, but he named us individually. And so I felt compelled to respond to him and not ignore him. So I think we should also discuss, confabbing with each other, conferring with each other, or something like that, or some process so that we do have, we have conferred with each other before we respond, or we go through the spokesperson or something. I suppose that's outside of this motion, but it's also something we should probably get straightened out, so we're not crossing wires with each other like I did with you this morning, Mr. President, when I responded to Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Commissioner Fielder. I appreciate the discussion. I agree it is outside the confines of this motion, but it is a discussion worth having. Discussion on the motion, which was to provide a process for the agency to be able to quickly designate informational witnesses, which would be to give me as the president the authority to do so, or my designee. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the vice president's motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. Okay, so back to the topic du jour, if you will. I think the commission is in agreement to send an informational witness to the House Bill 191 hearing on January 23rd. That would be Mr. Hamilton. I'll go ahead and move that as a motion. Is there a second?
I second that, Mr. President.
Thank you. And Vice President, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of my motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carried. So Mr. Hamilton, you'll represent the agency next Monday, please.
Understood.
Mr. Rosequist.
All right, Mr. President, next bill is House Bill 220. I don't believe this was discussed last week. It is a bill sponsored by Representative Joshua Kastmeyer. It would create a select committee on energy resource planning and acquisition. And at this point, the bill has been referred to the House Energy Committee. I've had time to briefly review this bill. It essentially creates a committee composed of members of the legislature, the Public Service Commission president, the Montana Consumer Council or a designee, somebody from the independent power community, somebody from the public interest group. I think I've got most of the representatives on that committee, and their purpose would be to review a number of topics related to resource planning and acquisition, the commission's role in that process, the roles of the Consumer Council, and roles of a number of, for example, a third-party administrator, a number of the issues that the commission struggled with during the development of the rules on resource planning and acquisition under House Bill 597. Thank you. So that's what I know about that bill at this point, Mr. President.
Mr. Rosequist, I don't recall if you said this, but I believe one of the persons that would be named as a representative on that to be developed committee is the president of the PSC and or his designee.
Correct.
Just a comment. So I'll do a motion first. So I'm going to do a motion to have the agency monitor this bill and to provide informational testimony or appear as informational, because you know there's going to be questions from legislators about the whole planning process. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll take Commissioner O'Donnell's second. All right, discussion. Colleagues, it's pretty clear to me that this bill is in response to our House Bill 597 rulemaking, which was completed. As you know, rulemaking was a challenging one, to say the least, and a bit time consuming. We certainly had some parties who regularly appear before the commission who had issues with the outcome of that rulemaking, but then we had regulated parties who supported that. It's pretty clear that this bill is in response to the House Bill 597 rulemaking. I think it's in the best interests of the commission as an entity and to protect our regulatory authority, to monitor this bill and to see what the developments are. So I'll be supporting my own motion. Additional discussion, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. Will, it strikes me this is the first I've, ever heard about this or in any detail. It sounds to me off the top of my head that it's rather duplicative to the processes that we have now. Although we do these things in a formal basis, asking for comments from the public, but what's the real value of this that would be added to the whole process right now? I'm not sure. I'm not seeing how another committee is going to be extremely helpful.
Mr. President, Commissioner O'Donnell, I'm not sure it's possible at this time to know for sure whether it will produce value. The committee would be charged with considering a number of the issues that the commission itself dealt with during the House Bill 597 process, and would be tasked with making recommendations to the 2025 legislature for any clarification in the statute that might be necessary. I will say that one of the issues that we ended up having to deal with was how to interpret the term third-party administrator as used in the statute, because it wasn't defined, and there were differences of opinion on how to interpret that. That could be one area that ends up getting clarified through the process. But yeah, it's hard to tell at this point whether it will be ultimately valuable or lead to a significantly different result. But the commission will have the opportunity in the 2025 session to consider whatever recommendations this select committee ends up coming up with.
Mr. President.
Vice President Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am going to support your motion for the commission to monitor and provide informational witnesses on this bill. I think that we should keep track of it and provide sound information as questions arise. And then I guess as we learn more about it, we can hear more about the bill and decide whether we want to take a position on it or not. But it seems to me monitoring it and providing information at this time would be prudent.
Thank you, Vice President Fielder. Additional discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor of my motion to monitor this bill and to provide informational testimony signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nope. No opposition, motion carries. Mr. Rosequist.
Mr. President, another bill, House Bill 241, also sponsored by Representative Joshua Kastmeyer, would prohibit the government from requiring buildings to be constructed with solar panels. That bill has been referred to the House Local Government Committee. And that is all I know about that bill at this time. Now, just a couple of bills that you've talked about before. Senate Bill 32, another PSC requested bill sponsored by Representative Mike or Senator Mike Cuff. Revising pipeline safety regulation penalties. A hearing on that bill occurred in the Senate Natural Resources Committee on January 6th at 3 p.m. President Brown was there to testify in support of that bill. Senate Bill 33 also.
I have an update on that bill. That bill passed through committee yesterday on a unanimous vote, and we'll head to the Senate floor.
Great. Senate Bill 33, also sponsored by Senator Mike Cuff, repeals Class C motor carrier regulations. A hearing on that bill occurred in the Senate Highways and Transportation Committee on Thursday, January 12th. President Brown was also at that hearing to support it for the commission. Then we have Senate Bill 97, sponsored by Senator Keith Regier. That implements renewable portfolio standard production tax for property tax relief. We discussed this at the business meeting last week, and the commission chose not to, or nobody proposed any motions on that bill. A hearing on that bill is scheduled tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. before the Senate Taxation Committee. Senate Bill 109, also sponsored by Senator Keith Regier, revises laws related to PSC districting or redistricting the PSC. The commission talked about this last week and no motions were made to do anything with that bill. And then finally, Senate Bill 147, sponsored by Senator Christopher Pope, creates a state energy conservation standard. And a hearing on that bill is scheduled this afternoon at 3 p.m. And staff has not had a chance to review that bill, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Rosequist. Okay. That concludes our legislative work session. We'll now move to work session new item number 5, which is litigation status update. This is commission initiated. We're going to discuss and hear an update on currently pending litigation, discuss litigation strategy that involves the Montana Public Service Commission, Department of Public Service Regulation. This portion of the business meeting will be closed to the public, and in that vein, I would note for the record that the presiding officer of any meeting may close the meeting during the time discussion relates to a matter of litigation and/or litigation strategy, and the presiding officer determines the need to protect agency litigation decision-making and discussion exceeds the merits of public disclosure. The discussion in this closed session will involve discussions and decision-making related to ongoing litigation in which the agency is involved as a party. Accordingly, as the presiding officer of this meeting, I am going to close the next portion of this meeting to the public. I would note for the record that upon conclusion of the litigation status portion of today's business meeting, this meeting will be adjourned. With that said, commissioners, we will reconvene in the commission conference room in 10 minutes, 2:20. Thank you.